The first part is when things don't go how you hoped and how you keep showing up anyway. Part 2 will be a Grace and Gavel podcast, which is when the narrative doesn't match the reality and why that matters. Have you ever had a day where you did everything right and it still didn't go the way you hoped? If so, then you would know how I felt yesterday. Our campaign concluded yesterday, and it was this extremely difficult, sad, hard situation. And so it didn't go how we hoped, but ultimately my candidate still has his integrity. He still has more experience than his opponent, who unfortunately won. And ultimately, he will fight again, and his skills are proven, and that's all we can do, right? Today didn't go how I expected. The emotional aftermath, which is often the hardest part, if you know the disappointment and the frustration, and just if you're a person who deals with somatic symptoms, as I do, oftentimes it sits in the chest. And oftentimes that's the idea of kind of broken heart, kind of going through all that stuff. And ultimately wanting to try to figure out what happened, how to frame the narrative, how to actually look at this as maybe a silver lining in disguise. I don't know. I'm not there yet, because we literally put in a year of this and ultimately came up short because only 24% of people showed up at the polls, which is not good. And I guess it's almost because I think a lot of people don't understand how important the primary is, nor do they understand some of their civic responsibilities. And that can be extremely difficult, especially when you are a person who are counting on people to show up and do their civic duty, because ultimately you can't complain about outcomes that you had no input on. And so we want to try to make it make sense. Good afternoon. Today we're doing a 2-part live. One is when things don't go as you hoped and how you keep showing up anyway. The second part is going to be a Grace and Gavel when the narrative doesn't match the reality and why that matters. So have you ever had a day where you did everything right and it still didn't go the way you hoped? If so, you know how I felt yesterday. My candidate unfortunately lost because we only had a 24% turnout. So there we go. But I won. So I guess that's kind of splitting the baby, huh? But I would prefer my candidate to have won. So ultimately, today didn't go as I expected. I think a lot of us have things riding on this, and feel like things, if you put in the work will reward you. Oftentimes that doesn't always happen. And then there's the emotional aftermath of disappointment, frustration, hurt, pain, inner somatic symptoms such as chest pains and anxiety, just because it's like, well, what now, right? And so ultimately the emotional aftermath is probably the worst part, because you're thinking and you're saying, what if, but 24%, come on people, right? And you try to over-explain it, try to rationalize it in your head, and it still comes out hollow. It still comes out painful, right? And you want to fix it. You want to over-explain it. You want to try to figure out what happened and what you could have done differently. Oftentimes, there's nothing you could do differently, especially if you gave the full effort, you did what you could do. Ultimately, you have to be okay with that because you can't go back, right? And then you want to make sense of it immediately. And that's what I kept doing. I kept rehashing and rehashing and rehashing. How many of you can relate to that? Rehashing moments that are just so difficult. And so let's tie back to, you don't need permission to feel the way you feel. It is your prerogative to feel how you feel. And you're going to feel pain. You're going to feel frustration. You're going to feel all the feelings, the negative feelings that no one wants to sit, but you're going to have to sit in discomfort. And that is currently what I've been doing. And it hasn't been fun, especially because I live with my candidate, obviously, and my candidate has been struggling, and to see him struggle hurts me immensely. So that is the other thing. And knowing that he was the most qualified candidate also hurts me immensely. Also, trying to control outcomes. We cannot control outcomes. No matter how much we try, how much we want, we can't control outcomes. We can't control people. We can't control their emotions. We can't control their motivations. We have to do what we can and understand that ultimately it's not our decision. We just have to place ourselves in the best spot that we can be in. And not everybody's going to win everything, and that's okay. But we have to still move forward. We have to keep showing up, not give up, and know that there's always a next time, right? So you don't fall apart when things don't go your way. You find out who you are, and you find out how to rebuild like the phoenix, right? Rising from the ashes and making a bigger impact and going to where you want to go. So in closing on part one, I'm still showing up, not perfectly, but consistently. And that matters more than anything else. Keep showing up, keep being there, keep putting yourself out there, because people will recognize that. And that is the most important thing you can do. Keep being consistent, keep being you, right? Push yourself to higher horizons. Push yourself beyond what you might be comfortable with. For instance, I said I won my election. I'm kind of nervous about it, but at the same time, like, I get to go to the Republican convention and see how that turns out. I'm a poli-sci nerd, so there we go. If you feel led and you feel you're getting some value, feel free to send us a like or a subscribe. We'd appreciate it. And so let's talk about Grace and Gavel. This is a true crime podcast. When the narrative doesn't match the reality and why this matters. In a lot of cases, what people actually see in the criminal cases and on the news is not what actually happened. If you are familiar with HLN News, for instance, like Nancy Grace, for instance, you know that they like to sensationalize. You know they like to hook you, meaning, get you paying attention and to watching them religiously. A lot of the things that they've said have been sensationalized. For instance, in Casey Anthony's case with her daughter Kaylee, I was down in Orlando during that time. Actually, my husband and I were Casey Anthony case, George Zimmerman case, various other cases that were all during that time period. She was talking about Kaylee having a sticker on her mouth and being wrapped up or whatever. I don't believe that was true based on what I saw on the trial, which I did watch the trial because I was interested in the trial. And so narratives get formed, and narratives generally are not always reality. A lot of people base a lot of their insight and a lot of their information from narratives, but narratives can sometimes be over-exaggerated, under-exaggerated, and flat out false, depending on who's actually doing those things. So you get partial information, kind of like we got with Kaylee in that particular situation, assumptions, and you know what they say about assumptions. Assumptions are not gospel. Assumptions are often not proven. They are a leap. And a leap is not going to get someone convicted. A leap is not going to prove reason beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So ultimately, assumptions are what they are, as we all know. And labeling behavior, right? So let's talk into the true crime world what we're talking about. We're talking about paranoid narratives. This person was paranoid. This person was psychotic. This person was crazy. This person was unhinged. Any number of things that they want to say to try to draw you in and make you want more and more information, right? Or no foul play suspected, right? So then it seems like the person harmed themselves. So key line here is the truth often lives in the part people didn't see, because they're not going to show you everything. You have to do your own research if you want to see more, if you want to fact check. And that's normal because a lot of things are left out. A lot of things are added to. A lot of things have no basis in reality. So in closing, that's why details and context matter more than headlines. So I just want to say thank you for tuning in to our live today. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day. And I hope that you'll come back and see us again soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.